Okay, here it is, you guys, the Anastasia Beverly Hills Prism palette. It is absolutely gorgeous. First, we are going to do the swatches, and then we'll get into the demo. So first, I'm going to swatch all of the shades on my arm side by side so you can see them all next to each other. Then I'll go in and swatch each shade individually on the back of my hand and talk about each one with you guys so you have an idea of what type of shadow it is, how to use it, that whole deal. So in this palette, there are 7 mattes, 3 metallics, and 4 duochromes. The palette costs $42, and don't forget, I bought a second one to include in my next giveaway, which will be for when I get to 5,000 subscribers. So if you are not already, please subscribe to my channel. That way you can be entered for when that giveaway goes live. So that is all 14 swatches on my arm. Now let's get into the individual swatches. First, you'll see Lucid. This is a duochrome. It's a white gold with a pink reflect. Then we have Eden. This is a matte coral pink type shade. Then next is Unity. This is a matte nude shade. It's basically the same color as my skin, so you can't even see it. Then there's Sphinx, which is a metallic bronze. Gorgeous color. Love it. Next is Osiris, which is a metallic type duochrome. It's a purpley shade with kind of a red or black reflect. I don't know, it kind of does both of them. Then there is this electric highlighter type yellow green shade, matte. It's called a Sphere. And then we have Obsidian, a super pigmented matte black, super pigmented. Now onto the bottom row, we have this gorgeous duochrome lilac shade. This is called Dimension. Then we have another matte shade. This is called Parallel. It's just a nice warm brown. Then we have Pyramid, which is a metallic gold, and it kind of has a green undertone to it. Then there's Throne, which is this amazing duochrome. It's green, and then you can see it kind of turns to like a navy blue. Then we have Saturn, which is a matte brick red terracotta type color. Next is the shade Eternal, which is a gorgeous metallic copper. And then the last shade is called Lore, and it's a matte kind of dusty mauve color. Now, I wanted to compare the Modern Renaissance side by side with the Prism palette because I do see a couple shades that look pretty similar. So the first two I'm going to compare is Lore and Buon Fresco. And you'll see me swatch these side by side, and I was happily surprised that they are quite different. You'll see the side-by-side swatches here, and you can tell a difference. The next two I wanted to compare are the shades Saturn and the shade Realgar from the Modern Renaissance palette. And you'll see Saturn is definitely more orange, whereas Realgar is a little bit more corally. Next, I also wanted to compare the Prism palette with the Subculture palette, and the first thing I noticed is that Throne shade would look gorgeous with those 2 teal matte shades in the Subculture, so I definitely want to do a look with that, but I want to compare the shades Eden and Roxy. Now, Roxy is that infamous shade that took the YouTube world by storm and really kind of demolished the reputation of Subculture. But you'll notice that my swatch of Roxy actually looks better, in my opinion, than the Eden shade. I had to kind of go back in and work it a little bit, and I think that's because Roxy was lighter pressed and much more pigmented, but that's why there was a lot of fallout. Next, I want to compare the shades Sphinx and Adorn. Here you will see a great improvement in the metallic shades. Adorn clearly does not go as far as Sphinx. Sphinx is a much better shade in my opinion, a lot more pigment. The next two shades I want to compare are Unity and Dawn. These are kind of the transition type shades. They are quite different. Unity has more of a yellow undertone, whereas Dawn is more of a pink, cool undertone. So that is really the only difference between the two. Now let's get into the demo. I am so excited, you guys. First, I'm going to swipe the shade Unity all over my lid to just set down the primer or concealer I used. I used the Tarte Shape Tape to prime my eyelids. And then I'm going to go in with the shade Lucid on my brow bone. I know most people do this last. They highlight their brow bone last, but I've kind of been liking to do it first because it forces me to stay low with my crease shades because I already see where I want the brow bone to be light. Next, I'm going to go in with Eden in my crease just to warm it up a little bit. I really, as I was doing this, had no idea what look I really wanted to do. All I knew is that I wanted to use that metallic-y lilac shade called Dimension. So I figured I would just throw some shades in the crease and see where it took me. And also just use as many shades as possible so that you guys can see how they perform. Next, I'm going to go into the shade Unity and basically just haze out that Eden shade, make it more of that ombre effect. Then I wanted to deepen it up a little bit more, so I used the shade Saturn in the crease, and this just really intensified that orangey, warm haze in the crease. These were very easy to blend. It reminded me a lot of the Modern Renaissance palette, so if you liked that palette, I think you would enjoy this as well. The next shade I'm going to use is the shade Parallel, which is that warm brown shade. I wanted to further deepen up the crease and really make sure that when we did the cut crease, it had a nice deep crease to go off of and make that stark contrast. And when doing a cut crease, you really don't have to worry about what your lid looks like. You just have to make sure that you're getting that nice hazed ombre effect above the crease, because we're just going to cover over the lid with concealer. It looks way harder than it actually is. I always was super intimidated by cut creases and never wanted to do them, but it's really not that hard. I am going to take a little bit of Saturn to further warm up the crease. I felt like Parallel kind of dulled it down, and I did want that bright orange to contrast with the lilac that we'll be putting on the lid. But first, I need to use my Tarte Shape Tape and a flat definer brush and cut that crease. So I just start towards the lash line and work my way out towards the crease, and then you kind of just feel where your eye socket is, and that's basically where you want to create that line. It's actually a little bit above where that fold is. If you have slightly hooded eyes, you want it a little bit above there. Now I'm going to go in with Dimension, which is this lilac shade, and I'm going to pack this on the inner portion of my lid. This was pretty easy to work with. I did not wet my brush at all, and I'm actually using the brush that was included in the palette. I'm using the kind of more dense side of the brush because it is a two-sided brush. And this shade was pretty easy to work with. The next shade, which is Osiris, was a little bit more difficult. This was the toughest shade to work with, but I think I made it work. I did have to just pack more and more on. It just was a little bit patchy, so I had to pack it on. That's pretty typical with duochrome shades, so I wasn't that surprised, but it was a little tricky. Then I went in with the shade Eternal, and I kind of realized that it was just too light and I was going to need to deepen it up. So I end up going in with the black shade Obsidian and just going over top of that. I really like the look of a dark outer V area when you're doing a cut crease because it just, I don't know, it ties it in a little bit better. It just looks the best in my opinion. So I'm just being very, very careful patting this in and then blending. This black shade has a lot of fallout, but that's because it's so pigmented and so black. I did also pick up a little bit of Parallel in between just to tone it down a little bit. I didn't want stark black. And then I used the shade Eden again just to create more of that ombre effect and haze out the edges. I now am going into Parallel like I said I was going to, and just kind of diffuse out that outer V, make it look a little bit more seamless. You'll notice with this look, it kind of looked pretty messy there for a minute. You just have to stick with it, keep adding on shadows, and the end result will really look nice, but you can't be worried if it's kind of looking like a hot mess, because I realized that it kind of did look like a mess, but you just have to keep working with it, filling in colors and blending. And that goes for any eyeshadow palette, not just this one. It goes for any more intense kind of eye look. That's typically what's going to happen, whether it's a cut crease, a smoky eye. It typically starts out looking a little weird, and you just have to keep on working it, keep on blending, just keep adding colors until you like the finished result. You see me here going back in to the Obsidian black shade and just hazing that out. Next, I'm going to take Unity and again haze out those edges. I really wanted a diffused ombre effect. This just helps with the blending process. Very important, but very simple step. Next, I'm going to apply falsies, and these are the Allure 126 or 216 lash. I don't know. I will link it down below. Then I finished off the rest of my makeup, and I'm just applying my lower lash line. I did Eden on the outer portion, Dimension towards the inside, and then Lucid in the very inner corner. So this is the finished eye look. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in my next one, guys. Bye.